as President Elon Musk, Donald Trump, his puppet, and the cronies at DOGE take a wrecking ball to the pillars of American democracy, vital public services that Americans of all stripes rely on, the government is headed toward a shutdown. It is imminent. And Mike Johnson in the House is scrambling to try to patch things up, facing backlash for a dramatic budget bill that his House conference passed recently that would slash $2 trillion from the federal budget and allow for, I believe, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and a $4 trillion increase in the debt limit. He's trying to put together a patchwork temporary funding bill that he's pitching as a clean CR. And he seems like he's holding his caucus in line. Democrats are standing up against him in the House to stop this devastating development from transpiring. And this is a fast-moving situation over in the House, moving quickly, very likely, to the Senate. To discuss this fast-moving and very complicated political dynamic, I am thrilled to be joined by my friend and ally in this fight, Murshed Zaheed, the founder of Pacifica Strategies, a brilliant public affairs professional, strategic communications advisor, and a masterful digital organizer. You got to check him out on Bluesky. We'll make sure we drop your handle. Murshed, thank you so much for joining us. Nobody is following this situation closer than you are, and I wanted to make sure we found time this week before all things are said and done, while people still have a chance to make a difference in seeing how this all resolves, to help us dig into this. What is going on? We're taping this on Tuesday afternoon. The House has just voted along party lines, effectively on party lines. There was one Republican defection, but Democrats locked arms and tried to vote this down. It advanced, the rule advanced, and we'll have a final vote most likely by the time this video airs. But what is the situation on the ground? Tell us about the CR. Maybe you could give us a little bit of a primer on what is a CR and what is a clean CR. Is this a clean CR?
Sure. Well, first of all, Alex, thank you so much for having me here. It's always nice to be able to discuss this stuff with former Senate traveler, or congressional traveler in our spaces. This is a big deal. This is essentially what we hear in the media dubbed as the government funding fight. But to be more technical, what's going on here was a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump endorsed essentially a bill to kick the can for government funding, which is extending the current funding that was set for fiscal year of 2024 through September of 2025. These are funding that essentially has been appropriated under the Biden administration, and they just need formal approval from Congress to move on by. And the deadline is, I believe, at the end of this Friday. But
March 14th, the funding, if nothing is passed by March 14th, the government will shut down. There will be no more funding.
Government technically will shut down. Now, the discussion that you will hear that this is essentially a clean government funding bill. The Republicans are just passing this, and obviously Democrats will need to get going and move along. But the problem here is the idea that this is a clean government funding bill, which means that this is a funding bill without any kind of poison bills, is just not true. Because first of all, there are a few specific problems to it. First of all, at this point, given what we have seen in this country in the last 50 days that Musk and Trump has done through their DOGE, nothing about this is clean. Essentially, the Trumpers have already said that, hey, just pass this bill, and then we will withhold any stuff that you approved on. If we think that's not efficient, we're just not going to spend the money on.
JD Vance went right out and said it right earlier today. He was in the GOP conference, and a source said, he says, I want everybody to vote for this under Section 2. That's Article 2. I believe he's referring to there. We will ensure that allocations from Congress are not spent on things that harm the taxpayer. There's so much grift in Washington. So that's more of the same, right? This DOGE to ignore congressionally appropriated language. and refused to spend money that Congress has passed laws ordering the executive to spend through this
Yeah,
made-up impoundment power.
for sure. And they're essentially saying the quiet part out loud. They basically want to let Elon Musk to continue the party that he has had since taking over, just slashing and burning government agencies left and right, destroying the lives of thousands of Americans, taking away their jobs. They just want to be able to continue that unimpeded. But there are a couple of other provisions in this funding bill that are deeply problematic. I mean, I imagine everyone has been hearing about Trump's tariffs and what he's been doing at tariffs. I think I read the joke today that Trump's tariffs these days are like the new infrastructure week. Tariffs are on again and off again. But what we have seen reports that essentially the Republicans snuck in a provision in this so-called clean CR that is essentially going to preemptively surrender any kind of congressional authority to block tariffs. Right. So when Republicans vote to move this, they're essentially going to be voting to support Trump's tariffs and all the resulting damage that's going to happen to the U.S. economy. And that's not all. There's more. Uh, this bill includes devastating cuts to DC government, which has always been a target of Trump and the Republicans. And in this case, arguably the motivations are petty. Trump wants to punish a city that already really does not have full representation in Congress simply because 92% of the city voted against him. And from what we have read, Jed Legume from Popular Information did some brilliant reporting on it this morning, and he detailed this includes about $1.1 billion in cut. And that includes like cuts to police department, cuts to schools. I believe over $350 million in cuts to school systems in DC, both public and private. Just devastating stuff. It includes millions of dollars cuts to police departments and emergency medical services. So there's nothing clean about the CR. Any Democrat, and we have even underpinned the most important aspect of it as well. The bill does not include anything that reins in what Musk and Trump has been doing. And I don't think we have to go over in full details about the devastating cuts or the impacts of DOGE shenanigans to date. They have completely mutated the Social Security Administration. They have slashed like big parts of National Institute of Health, Veterans Administrations, resulting in thousands and thousands of job losses of veterans, resulting in devastating impact to cancer research. All those cuts are already done. I think a key point that we should all think about is Republican government shutdown is already in effect, right? Trump and Musk have already kind of shut down or paralyzed a big part of the government. And right now, if one thing Democrats really need to do is to stop that madness. It's essentially lawlessness. And the only leverage they have, and this is one of the few times they're going to have legislative leverage, is they insist on Republicans, well, if you are going to need our vote, you're going to have to make it very clear. You're going to have to make the law unequivocally clear that you can't do this. They're going to have to rein that in. And if they cannot rein that in, that will essentially be a complete surrender and an abdication of their responsibilities to their constituents and to the country.
Absolutely. And it's hard to know really what even that would accomplish, right? Even if they wrote this into the law, what that would accomplish in terms of actually constraining DOGE, Musk, this Trump administration from doing what it wants, from asserting unilateral executive power to ignore laws passed by Congress, potentially even ignore judicial orders trying to stop it, right? In a number of cases, and we've talked about this on this program, the courts are the administration is just not adhering to court orders trying to stop it. And so, and I think Democrats always, seemingly trying to sort of restore normalcy to an increasingly insane world, and I think it's perfectly distilled in a situation like we find ourselves in this fight, sort of feel like they need to go through the process and keep the government open. And you wrote a piece recently, I think it was last week, Murshed, in Brian Butler's excellent newsletter Off Message, about how Democrats need to avoid that impulse, how they need to take a more forward-leaning fighting posture, operationalize a war room like one you helped lead for former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who you noted in your piece was a boxer and brought that fighting spirit to the Senate, and which I think has really gone away. It was certainly my sense working under Senate Democrats during the first Trump era. They didn't have a great fighting spirit or impulse. And I think that's where the rubber's going to really hit the road here. How have the House Democrats responded to this CR fight? And what's your estimation of the kind of fight they have shown up with? And what is your estimation on how this is going to go in the Senate from what you're hearing about? Because that would be subject to the filibuster. So the Senate would need, what is it, 7 potentially Democratic votes to advance the CR and keep the government funded. How do you see that playing out? What can folks watching us here, listening to us here, do to make sure, if they agree with us, that that their representatives, Democratic representatives particularly, don't go along with this effective endorsement of the DOGE Musk government destruction agenda?
Yeah, those are really good questions. Now, if I were to work backwards, I'll start with the piece that you mentioned about essentially what I was advocating for was congressional Democrats and especially Senate Democrats to formulate a strategy, to lay out a strategy on how they take on this regime and the Republican majority, and that bore out of sort of the experiences we had last time. I felt Democrats were in the same predicament. That was after the elections in November of 2004. That was also not a great time to be a Democrat, to be candid. George Bush had gotten reelected for the second time, and Democrats were in the dumps. And they elected new leaders to lead them on the House and the Senate, and they went with Senate at that time Harry Reid from Nevada, who was a very soft-spoken, perceived to be as a moderate from a purple state. But the one thing both Senator Reid and, to her credit, Leader Pelosi knew at that time is when you're in the opposition, you don't control much, right? You don't really get to set the agenda. You don't have any control over the hearings. But there's one thing the opposition has is communications. One of the most important thing about being an opposition party is to really leverage all the tools that you have in terms of set a narration and use messaging and use all communication tools at your disposal. And that was one of the part and parcel of Leader Reid's approach. He came in with the mindset, okay, we're not going to let them have the whole court to themselves. We're going to push back. We're going to fight. And once you take that mindset on that we're going to fight them with everything we've got, it was easy for him to put together a communication strategy. He built a war room where at that time was pretty revolutionary, using all the channels at their disposal and pushing out messaging. But the thing was, Reid picked a fight. And he knew that George Bush was going to try to privatize Social Security. And that's where he said, we're going to put a firewall. We are not going to give them 41 votes or 40 to pass this. And that essentially started it all. And I think Democrats should be thinking about the same way this time. They're not going to have a lot of opportunities to lean into and counterattack Trump and the Republicans. But the two opportunities they were going to have is essentially the fight around government funding, the funding fight that we're having right now, and then the fight that they're going to have on the reconciliation bill, the budget fight a few weeks from now. And And this is where the Senate really matters. And Alex, as former Senate staffers, it's Republicans are going to need Democratic votes. This thing is not going anywhere without 60 votes, and Republicans have a 53-47 majority. And from what I'm hearing, they're going to at least lose one of their own, Rand Paul from Kentucky, on this. So they're going to need at least 7 Democratic votes. And one would think no Democrat in their clear mind will be voting for any legislation that does not rein in what I hate to say it is legislative goonery that slashes and burns and essentially guts one government agencies after another. I mean, reports are breaking in the last couple of hours that they are essentially going to furlough or lay off about half the Department of Education. They're essentially putting in motion de facto cuts to Social Security or whatnot. Like, these are stuff that you just cannot vote for. And never mind the stuff that we talked about in terms of the impact it's going to have on DC, on tariffs or whatnot. Now, the vote, we had a rules vote on the House side. It's a 2-step dance. First, they need to have a vote on the rules, and then on the actual bill. And I thought the House Democrats have acquitted themselves pretty well. They have done a pretty, I believe, the rules vote only passed by 2 votes, if I had it right, and one Democrat did not get to vote because of health-related reasons, Congressman Grijalva, but otherwise they held the line, and it's unclear right now if the Republicans will have all their ducks in a row later on tonight. I think my gut tells me they will find a way, and they're going to force this through. But this is why the Senate is going to be the show. It's going to be the ball game, and this is going to be one of those opportunities for Democrats to make a statement to their constituents, to in their states, to the base, and to the country, and say, okay, enough. We have had enough of this lawlessness. We have had enough of essentially living in a country right now where we're living with 2 presidents, like one an elected one, another one that's, I don't know what to call it. Nobody knows what to call Elon Musk at this point. And it's really imperative that Chuck Schumer lays out a vision of how Democrats need to fight. That essentially he needs to have that "have you no sense of decency" moment. Have you no sense of shame moment to the Republicans, and say we have had enough of this. And I think this is also a really good fight to pick for Democrats, because public pollings have already shown that Trump's numbers are going down. His numbers on economic approval ratings are going down. And even worse, Elon Musk numbers, his approval ratings have been going down pretty much like his mediocre rockets and terrible cars, right?
Yeah. And I think this is what this comes down to, right? Is that
exactly
a vote for this funding continuation, this very dirty, not clean at all, CR is a blank check for Elon Musk. And your representatives, your senators need to understand that. You have a few days now to make your voices heard. Please make sure you do it. It's really essential. That I think right now the Democrats, they sort of have their finger in the wind, trying to figure out what to do in terms of political strategy. The way they know that this is a fight worth having is when they hear from their constituents. So, Murshed, thank you so much for joining us, for downloading your amazing expertise, for all that you are doing to mobilize and organize communities in support of freedom. Check out Murshed's Bluesky. It's an essential follow. Murshed Z at Bluesky. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us here on Midas Touch Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. Until next time, let's hope this fight proceeds and that freedom and democracy prevail.
Thank you so much, Alex. Take care.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.